Hello everyone, buddy, and welcome to our quick and dirty introduction to copyright in music, brought to you by Tjoon. In this episode, we cover what a CMO is and where royalties come from. In the last episode, we looked at copyrights. Like everything else, they are split between publishing and recording industries. We learned that there are various aspects of copyright that can exist in music. Each one of these aspects gives the owner of the copyright certain rights to exploit them in certain ways. To be used, each form of copyright requires a license of some kind. These licensing fees are royalties that rights holders earn. In this episode, we're going to look at how royalties get from the music users to the rights holders. In other words, how to get paid. We're talking about collective management organizations known as CMOs and the global network of copyright administration, who they are, what they do, and how they do it. To begin, it's worth mentioning that each country has unique copyright laws. However, thanks to international agreements like TRIPS and the Berne Convention, there's generally a lot of harmony between the laws of each country. Added to this, the music industries have adapted as technologies change to ensure that money keeps flowing and the industries keep turning. Over the last few hundred years, as copyright law and usage have increased, most countries and their music industries have come together to make copyrights easier to use from anywhere in the world. The most notable treaty for this episode was the Berne Convention, held in Bern, Switzerland in 1886 and signed by 176 countries. The effect is that copyright in any country is globally regarded. This makes it easy for virtually anyone in any country to access licenses to use music and allows organizations that administer these licenses to work within the framework of their country's laws. Remember all of those rights that we spoke about in episode 3? Remember how many different ways there were to use music? As we learned, each time one of these takes place, a license is required. Can you imagine how long it would take to do business if each and every user had to contact each and every rights holder just to use a work? Radio and TV broadcasters use thousands of works every week and streaming services millions a day. Similarly, can you imagine the headache it would be for a single rights holder to collect each and every royalty and track each and every usage or license on their own? The solution comes from the music industry. The industries have developed a system called collective management, where they establish societies, organizations, and federations specifically to administer music licensing and the collection and distribution of royalties. Simply put, these CMOs act a bit like trade unions. Rights holders are able to sign up with them as members and assign the administration of the copyrights over to the CMO. The CMOs then manage licensing and royalty administration on behalf of their members collectively. They issue licenses and collect fees, monitor copyright usage, collect royalties, and distribute them to the right owners. In most places in the world, like South Africa, there is an individual CMO for each aspect of copyright. The phrase CMO is technically an umbrella term referring to any copyright management society that is a non-profit organization and is also owned by its members. A CMO that deals with a specific aspect of a copyright has its own name. In South Africa, we have the following organizations. In the publishing industry, we have a performance rights organization, or a PRO, called SAMRO, and a mechanical rights organization too, an MRO, called CAPASO. They administer publishing rights. In the recording industry, we have a music licensing collective, or an MLC, called SAMPRA, that administers neighboring rights, and a recording industry trade association called RISA. Each CMO plays 3 roles. Firstly, they administer the rights of their members, ensuring that they receive the royalties just like every other CMO around the world does for its members. Secondly, and thanks to the Berne Convention, they monitor the use of all copyrights generated in their country by their members and members of CMOs in other countries, which is called reciprocity. Lastly, they have a mandate to prevent copyright infringement, more commonly known as piracy. If they find a person or organization that is using music without a license, they will take action against them to get all of the revenue that should be paid to the rights holders. To clarify reciprocity, let's use SAMRO as an example from South Africa and PRS as the performance CMO from the United Kingdom. SAMRO will administer performance royalties that exist in South Africa and collect every single performance-based royalty that is generated in South Africa. After they've collected the royalties, they split the money into two portions, one for their members and one for the rights holders who are members of other CMOs like PRS. They then pay the international portion to PRS and other CMOs. At the same time, the international CMOs like PRS will collect all of the royalties linked to performance rights owed to South African musicians and pay them to SAMRO. SAMRO then pays its members all of the royalties due to them, including all of those generated in South Africa and all of those from every region that has a performance rights organization. As you can see, it's a fairly complex process with a lot of checks and balances involved to assure that the right money gets to the right people. Got that? Good, because it's about to get a little bit more complex. In order for all the CMOs in the world to work together and with one another, they need to use standard forms of communication and technology that are compatible. They need to access the same information or metadata and have firm agreements in place with one another and every other CMO that they work with. In order to achieve this, the CMOs from around the world have created what we call umbrella organizations. They are essentially bigger collective management organizations that our local CMOs are members of. These umbrella organizations help member societies like SAMRO to do their work by developing technology for the industry to use. Additionally, they host central databases with virtually every copyright and its associated metadata. They also monitor global industries, issue trend reports, and lobby for better copyright legislation around the world. Finally, they make sure that the resolutions of the Berne Convention are upheld by helping individual member societies work better together. In terms of South Africa, our major CMOs work with 4 specific umbrella organizations. In the publishing industry, SAMRO and Capasso are both members of SISAC and BEAM. In the recording industry, SAMPRA is a member of SCAPR and RISA is a member of the IFPI. We've mentioned metadata a lot. It is important to understand because in some ways the entire industry only works because of it. The word data refers to raw facts that may or may not make some sense when viewed alone. The word metadata refers to a set of data, or facts, that describes and gives information about other data. With this in mind, if we consider a musical or recorded work as a piece of data, the metadata is the information that tells us about the work and therefore makes it usable. It tells us how long the work is, what the work is called, who owns it, who made it, when, where, and how often it has been used, which release it was a part of, and how you can access a license to use it, as well as a lot of other information that could be included. A key part of this metadata is the unique identifiers. These are unique codes that identify individual rights holders and individual works. These identifiers are overseen by the various umbrella organizations that we just mentioned. They get generated by local CMOs on behalf of the umbrella organizations. In the publishing industry, each and every rights holder has a unique IPI, or Interested Party Information Number. This number will never change. Every single publishing copyright that person ever owns will be linked to this number. It is like your publishing ID number. Each individual musical work has a unique ISWC number, or International Standard Music Work Code. Just like an IPI number, this number will never change. Even if the work changes owners, this code will remain the same. It's like the chassis number of a car. Both the IPI and ISWC networks are administered by CSAC. In South Africa, SAMRO is the registered organization that can generate and assign the unique codes to rights holders and their works. In the recording industry, rights holders are assigned a unique IPN or International Performer Number. It's similar to an IPI number and will never change. Every single neighboring copyright that a person ever owns will be linked to this number. Each individual recorded work gets a unique ISRC or International Standard Recording Code. Just like an ISWC, each recorded work can only ever have one ISRC. It will never change, even if the copyright is sold. In South Africa, SAMPRA generates IPNs under the authority of SCAPA. RISA, as a member of the IFPI, is able to generate ISRCs. So how do you get to benefit from this global network of copyright organizations? What stands between you and your royalties? It's as simple as signing up with your correct CMOs, assigning them permission to administer your rights and ensuring that they have all the important metadata by giving them as much info as possible to uniquely identify your works. In return, they will generate all of the required unique identifiers, administer your rights, license your works, and collect your royalties for you. It's that simple. To wrap up this episode, let's recap our local CMOs to find out where they fit into the music industries and how they fit into this global network. Starting with the publishing industry, let's look at performance rights and SAMRO. As we learned a few minutes ago, SAMRO is technically a performance rights organization. They are a member of SAISAC, which allows them to generate and assign IPI and ISWC numbers. As a member of BM, SAMRO has access to their database, which hosts the collective metadata of every single member society in the world. This allows SAMRO to work easily with any performance-based rights. They also issue all of the performance licenses in South Africa for broadcast, transmission, and live performance. Capasso is a mechanical rights organization, or MRO, and therefore is a CMO that administers mechanical rights on behalf of publishing rights holders. Capasso was set up in part by SAMRO. They work closely together to ensure that all publishing rights are correctly administered in South Africa. SAMRO generates all IPI and ISWC numbers on behalf of Capasso. It is, in its own capacity, part of SAISAC and BM, which affords it the same access to the global networks as SAMRO and administers every mechanical license and all mechanical royalties in South Africa. Capasso is also one of the continental leaders in collecting publishing-related royalties from all online usage. This includes YouTube, streaming services, and online digital stores. In the recording industry, SAMPRA is an MLC, or Mechanical Licensing Collective, that administers our neighboring rights. Through its membership with SCAPA, SAMPRA is able to generate IPN numbers, as well as access their massive database, similar to BM's database. SAMPRA was set up in part by RISA, which hosts the collective metadata of every single member society, which means that they work together to an extent. This allows SAMPRA to work easily with any neighboring-based rights and issue all of the neighboring licenses in South Africa for broadcast and transmission on behalf of the rights holders from around the world. The last CMO that we need to talk about is technically a trade association, which acts like a CMO. A trade association is an organization founded and funded by businesses that operates in a specific industry for that industry's development. In this case, RISA advances the interests of the recording industry. At the same time, as a member of the IFPI, they are able to generate and allocate new ISRCs. Just like the IFPI, they have a mandate to monitor the recording industry and create reports to show where it stands. And that's that. Now you know the ins and outs of how licenses and copyrights and royalties work in the music industries and in South Africa. Make sure you go through our study guide and attend our live masterclasses to fully empower yourself as a South African musician. And stay tuned to Tjoon.app for more free tools that will help you empower and manage your copyrights and earn the royalties you deserve. Tuning out for now.